Hello, and welcome to AI News that you should know about. I'm your host, Ashley Coffey.
And I'm Daniel Hill. Every week, in about 15 minutes, we cover the AI news stories that you need to know about. This week, we'll be talking about Anthropic's leaked memo explaining their funding sources. We'll also be talking about a recent Microsoft SharePoint hack. We'll get into Proton's new privacy first AI assistant that keeps your chats encrypted and no logs, and the US government issuing new directives on AI development.
Ooh, lots to dive into this week, so let's get into it. First up, we've got the CEO of Anthropic with a leaked memo that has been making headlines this week. He told his staff that Anthropic plans to seek UAE and Qatar funding, likely enriching quote unquote dictators, and says a quote no bad person rule is impractical. And this is interesting because it looks like Anthropic says that the company will pursue Gulf state investments after all. And for the CEO to come out and say that they think that, quote, no bad person should ever benefit from our success, end quote, is a pretty difficult business principle to run on. It's kind of wild. And this is really starting to seep into the airwaves. Very interesting. I don't like it. I've been hearing from other people as well that this leaked memo is really kind of shining a light on kind of the state of the race of AI right now. So what are your thoughts on that one, Daniel? It's kind of weird.
It is. I actually would love to get your opinion first because I think in the major players in the AI space, it's Google with Gemini, OpenAI. How does Anthropic fit into this from your vantage point? Obviously, they have Claude. Obviously, they are powering Amazon's new smart speaker system. But how do you think they fit into the landscape?
I don't think they do. I think they're trying to fit themselves into the landscape, and this is why they're having such an issue, is they're just not fitting, and they're trying to partner with those that might make them become a fit. And it's kind of like what we see at the beginning of some large brands, like a large handful of things come out. We've got all these different flavors of AI, but only a handful are going to emerge. And I think with Anthropic leaning more into the UI for Claude, that is what sets them apart only. But do I see long-term success are they willing to sustain? I'm not sure with a memo like that, but I do see a trend in so much UAE investments coming into the US, specifically because we have so much land and property and rich minerals. And I mean, I live in Oklahoma. We've got wind, we've got oil and gas, we've got plenty of space. So AI does require significant amount of energy, and I don't want humanity to become extinct because we're not asking the questions of, should we think about how much water AI is using when water is our most precious resource next to air? It's a little bit reactive than proactive, and I hope we don't get there, but we seriously have to put the brakes on some of this development before it gets too out of hand. And one of your headlines actually talks a little bit about that, so I'm excited to dive into that because there is some relation there.
I just had one comment about this article, and you had shared the quote from it where the CEO said, quote, I think no bad person should ever benefit from our successes is a pretty difficult principle to run a business on, end quote. And that contrasted sharply with what Google had as their motto when they first came out, which was do no evil. And I think those companies, both Anthropic and Google, are so far beyond that when it comes to evil intentions and recognizing that corporate profits are way more important than people. But it just gave me pause to say something that blatant and how much that contrasts with being a people first company, being focused on humans and individuals and bettering humanity. And just to your point, how far that's gone by the wayside. So yeah, this is an interesting one to watch.
For sure. And I encourage people to tap in. You don't have to be a technical expert to be a part of these conversations or to know what's going on to inform yourself. So we'll stay up to date on that and let you know what else comes next. All right. Next headline for the day. Microsoft says some SharePoint server hackers are now using ransomware. Aye, aye, aye. So if you didn't see this, a cyber espionage campaign happened centered on vulnerable versions of Microsoft's server software, and it involves the deployment of ransomware. So Microsoft published a statement yesterday, Wednesday, about this. And they cited that there's an expanded analysis and threat intelligence, surprise, surprise, which the Microsoft group dubs Storm 2603, that is the name of the hacker ransomware group that is facilitating this. It is a Chinese sponsored spyware attack. I will say on this front that people don't realize that at the beginning of this year, the Cybersecurity Administration, CISA, who is basically the federal entity for cybersecurity standards, they were received a directive to no longer look at China and Russia as cybersecurity threats. So when that happened, it opened the doors for the US and its citizens as sitting ducks. And this is a lagging indicator of that. And it's just the beginning. So if you were on a server and you were functioning on that, your data was definitely put at risk. So the fact that Microsoft is having these issues shows the scale and depth. And really where we're at, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing, but a lot of small companies are dealing with this too because they have no idea how to handle technology and they love AI, but they're not willing to pay for someone to come in to actually deploy it right. So I think this is a slippery slope. It's sad. I'm unfortunate like that this happened, but it's going to continue to happen unless we make some policy and legislation to prevent it from happening. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
This article you linked to is very interesting because it says the spy campaign began after Microsoft failed to fully patch a security hole in its SharePoint server software, kicking off a scramble to fix the vulnerability when it was discovered. This makes you want to, or at least me, point the finger at Microsoft right
Yep.
away, right? This vulnerability should have been fixed. But I think about how many companies I've seen taking advantage of cybersecurity insurance, which on the surface sounds a little bit silly. But if you're ever in a situation and maybe you are strongly considering paying the ransom to get your files back, this is affecting your business, your corporation, families are not able to get paid because of this. This is a really interesting scenario where it almost is easier to pay the ransomware fee because this problem was not addressed way back when by Microsoft. So I have been thinking about that cybersecurity insurance a lot lately. And I think there are scenarios where it's almost quicker and easier. But of course, there's downsides too. If you pay the hackers, right, they're just now more
Mm-hmm.
bold to continue to do this because there's money in it. So this is definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, and it begs the question too of like, why aren't you backing up your stuff in at least three different places? That's a basic cybersecurity thing. Back it up in three different places. That way, if someone does say, "Hey, we got your stuff," you can say, "Bye, I've got my stuff too." But yeah, I've seen a lot of institutions, law firms, hospitals, schools, public schools have their information put at risk and be put into a situation where you have to pay ransomware. So it's unfortunate, and I encourage people to really be cognizant of what's happening. I imagine, I mean, let's say Microsoft has so much terms and conditions and their T's and C's that I'm sure that they have absolved themselves from any liability from their lack of preventative measures. But I
Of course.
assume that they're probably going to have some kind of lawsuit or class action lawsuit against themselves for admitting fault here, clearly.
That's true. I'm very surprised that their lawyers would allow them to admit
Right?
fault in this kind of situation. Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, someone didn't put it through legal.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about Proton's new AI assistant that's focused around privacy and the US government's new directives on AI development. Stick around. Welcome back. Let's continue with our news stories, and we're going to be talking about Proton's new privacy first AI assistant, which is designed to encrypt all of your conversations between the assistant and not store any logs. Now, this is interesting because this company, Lumo, they do not require you to create an account in order to use this AI assistant. There are apps, obviously, to do it, or you can do it through the website. You can upload files. You can have a Drive account through the company. You can connect it to access files that you have stored in the cloud. And this is really designed for users who care about security, but primarily for European users.
Oh,
The company said that it gives the company a leg up over AI companies based in the US and China when it comes to privacy.
ooh.
The company made a really interesting chart showing what this AI assistant does in terms of security compared to Gemini, Microsoft's Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and DeepSync. And the things that it points out is that it never uses your data to train its AI. It deletes the logs of all your chats, can't share your data with anyone. It has an ad-free business model. It's based in a high privacy jurisdiction, and
Mm.
the source code is open to the public. So a
Whoa.
lot of pluses here. Ashley, I'd love to get your thoughts.
One, first off, I love that you shared this. I had no idea. This is the first I'm hearing of it. So thank you. And wow, I'm looking at this chart that you're referencing, and it looks like it hits the mark. So I'm never training, like you mentioned, never sharing your data to train AI models. My question of skepticism is how are they making money?
Right.
On this front, but I like that they're leading the way. And this is actually something really important for everyone to hear is that if you want to look at a good framework for AI policy and legislation and framework, look at the EU. It's a gold standard. They have protections in place that
Yes.
have actually worked. And I like that they're giving themselves a leg up by differentiating themselves in terms of privacy. I wish that other companies did that. But this also lends to one of the other stories I think we talked about earlier is the potential divestiture from Silicon Valley globally, because most things are either on Amazon Web Services or Google. And I believe there was a case out of the Netherlands in which clients of large companies in the Netherlands were asking the companies to not use Amazon Web Services or Google as a part of their contract. So I like the differentiation here between Lumo because that puts them in a competitive advantage just in case things go south and just in case the EU says, okay, we're not going to use Gemini Copilot or OpenAI or any of these tools because they're not abiding by EU laws and framework. So I'm glad that you mentioned this. I'm definitely going to look into it a little bit further and understand their business model of how they're able to sustain this without doing any of these things. Because I've always wondered, is it possible for us to have something that hits the marks on privacy and can be profitable, but isn't doing anything shady? Like, I hope they're able to do that.
Yes. In preparation for this discussion, I asked Gemini, what do you know about me? And interestingly, the response was that it didn't know much about me. It is designed to protect my privacy. It doesn't know any personally identifiable information about me. So I asked the same question of ChatGPT, what do you know about me? And it gave me my job title, what sort of podcasts I do, who I interview, some projects that I've worked on, what my goals are when it comes to weightlifting and getting in better shape, what my personal style is. It knows a lot about me. So surprisingly, Gemini, not as much data as I would have thought, even though Google knows a ton about me. Contrast with OpenAI's ChatGPT knowing quite a lot about me based on the conversations that I've had with it over the past 3 years. So this is a really interesting one to kind of think about and understand. Do you want your AI to know about you and be able to reference all this information? And who knows what happens with that data afterwards? Or would you prefer that you start with a blank slate every time? And I think that's a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you don't have to create an account here. That means friends, family that are wanting to dip their toe in. It's like a really zero risk option to kind of play around.
Yeah. Let's get into our last story. The US government has issued new directives on AI development. President Donald Trump has issued executive orders designed to make the US more of a leader in global AI development and remove restrictions around key aspects. The AI.gov website has a quote. It says, the president of the, I'm sorry, the AI.gov website says, the United States of America is the leader in AI and our administration plans to keep it that way. And then it says President Donald J. Trump. So these directives are really designed to encourage AI development, but I think there are some concerns there. For instance, one of the executive orders alleviates federal regulation in relation to the using of copyright protected content in order to train AI models. This is something we've talked about on the show before because AI needs data in order to train, but you, as someone who creates content, who has copyrighted information that could be available on the internet, may not want the AI model to be trained on that. President Trump says that AI developers simply can't be expected to build a successful program, quote, when every single article, book, or anything else that you've read or studied, you're supposed to pay for, end quote. I think that corporations do have money to pay for the data to train their AI models. Ashley, what do you think?
I'm glad that you picked this and thank you. This reminds me of going back to when I was a photographer in college and having a photography business and seeing my photos everywhere on people's profiles, people's business, seeing them in ads without knowing. And it was impossible. Did I get any money from that? No, absolutely not. So that was frustrating. And I think people are just getting a taste of that medicine right now of what happens whenever intellectual property and copyrighted material flow out there and you don't get a return from that. It's been happening for years. It's just now elevating in the conversation. Yes, it's hard, but also if you look back to Sora, they literally said on the record in a YouTube video, they used and scraped the entire internet, publicly available YouTube information, YouTube videos, and publicly available Instagram videos and content. So all the publicly available information has already been scraped. So the fact that it's like, it's just mind-boggling to me, and the statement that's we're leading AI, we're going to keep it that way. No, we're not. We're definitely not leading that way. And it's delusional to say that. It's quite frankly, we do need some more security precautions in place to protect privacy and humanity and the environment. Will we get there? I'm not quite sure. I hope that we do. We're just really in an interesting time when it comes to AI. I hope that gives you the answer that you're looking for.
Yes. And I think there's a contrast, though, between data that you might put online voluntarily.
Hmm.
But if you're an author who wrote a book and maybe you wrote that book years ago and it's a paper book, but some method was used in order to scan that book and put it online and now it's an AI, but you never released it as a digital ebook, right? You didn't opt into having this feed AI.
So bad.
Should you be compensated, right? And I think that is a real conversation that people should be able to choose whether or not, especially things they've created offline, they want to have AI train on or not. There should be protections in place there, or they get compensated or whatever. That's my thought on it.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that brings up the WeTransfer terms and conditions, where they said, hey, if you're going to use WeTransfer, then we reserve the right to use your photographs and anything you're putting in WeTransfer as our training data.
I hadn't heard that before.
We'll cover that next time.
All right, that sounds good. That is it for our AI news that you should know about this week. You can find links to everything we've discussed in the show notes. You can connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear what you think of the show and how we can make it better. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at Daniel Hill Media.
And thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We do this for you. And make sure you're subscribed to be notified when new episodes go live. If you want more tech talk, you can find me on Instagram at Ashley Coffey. And you can find my other podcast called Coffee and Code on Apple Music, YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if that wasn't enough for you, I have a business called Coffee and Consult, where we specialize in helping small to medium-sized businesses leverage technology for efficiency and profitability. Well, that's it for today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you all for listening, and come back next week for more discussion around AI news that you should know about.